Member Jim Patterson from Fresno with the news that came out today that, well, we already know there's going to be a state audit of the high-speed rail, the brown doggle, but now the U.S. Department of Transportation wants to do a federal audit.
Jim, welcome. How are you?
Good to be back with you guys. Thank you.
So the feds are going to be sniffing around.
I actually think this one's going to be even a tougher bar for high-speed rail, because I think that they're beginning to realize what we realized some time back, that they really have terribly misspent the federal money. In fact, if you want to trace back to the real problem as to why this is so over budget and delayed, a couple of years back, Obama, gave them money.
$3 billion, right?
About $3 billion. They had a timeline where you had to spend it or lose it. I've discovered that they very well knew back then that they did not have the property, but they had to spend the money, so they shoved out hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts where they didn't have any land. Well, if you don't have any land, you don't have any right-of-way. If you don't have any right-of-way, you don't have any railroad.
Right. So I remember this. They spent a lot of money on contractors, and then the contractors bought a lot of equipment, and all the equipment had to sit there in storage because they had nowhere to go. And then the contractor said, "Hey, you got to pay us penalties because we have all our equipment tied up, and we're not able to do any work."
Now, this is the serious hook that high-speed rail is on right now with the feds, because I think there's going to be some serious revelations that are going to go through this. This is an inspector general, and I think there's a real high possibility that California may have to send back a whole lot of money back to the feds if this audit uncovers some of the stuff that I know about from our investigations, but also some of the litigation that is now going on. There are some lawsuits that are on file and are coming that harken back to this decision knowingly to risk the federal money, shoving it out the door when they did not have property on which to have the contractors actually do something. It's really a mess.
And they knew that was wrong to do that.
They knew it, and in fact, this Brian Kelly's the new guy. He's come in and supposed to fix everything. He actually has admitted as much that what I just said they did, and in an oversight hearing this week said, after my question, no, we're not going to do anything like that again, so it doesn't happen again. So they essentially admitted to it. But, like all bureaucrats and bureaucracies, they have this language all to themselves where they basically say, well, we miscalculated the risk factor in analyzing. How much BS is that? They knew the risk, and they did it anyway. That, to me, is a serious fiduciary responsibility that the High-Speed Rail Authority failed, and I think this Fed audit is going to dig into that seriously.
And how serious can it get for the people involved here? I mean, at what point is this criminal?
You've asked a number of times. I don't really know. There's a lot of court cases that, frankly, the courts generally back up the bureaucracies if they're acting with the cover of their authority. You really have got to do some awful. You have to steal the money and stick it in your pocket before you lose the cover of the courts.
I know, but to me it seems like they do that in a way because what they do is they hire their buddies. Everybody gets a contract. You get all these lawyer contracts, PR contracts, engineering contracts, consulting contracts, and it all goes to donors of whatever party's in power running the whole thing.
The best way to get to that kind of an answer is for these kinds of audits to take place, and for the oversight people in the legislature, like me, we have to do our duty in keeping the spotlight on and keep digging. And the notwithstanding the audit, this last business plan that they unveiled this week has some absolutely stunning things in it. First of all, they absolutely admit, and they admitted in the committee just this week, they only have 1/3 of the money that it takes to get this whole thing built. 1/3.
Yeah.
And they have no idea where they're going to get the rest of it. They also admitted that the initial operating system is going to be a rump railroad, and I warned about this, and I've been warning about this for at least the last 6 months. They were going to get a rump railroad that runs from just outside Bakersfield to just outside Madera.
What's that going to do?
They confirmed that. Nothing. And in fact, it gets worse.
They confirmed that?
Absolutely. That is the initial operating system. They have no idea how to connect the San Jose area through the tunnels in through the mountains. So we've got expenditures in the Bay Area. They're building stuff in Central California, and they're building some things down in your area. But there is no plan. There's no financing to connect up those disconnected segments. And they admitted it. I mean, they don't have the money to do it. And in fact, they admitted it in a very direct way by changing the manner in which they describe the initial operating system. Up until this business plan, it was described as high-speed rail. It is now being described as high-speed rail ready. Now, when I pressed Kelly over and over on this, I said, what is the difference? And he, bobbed and weaved and jumped around, but he never said we're going to put a railroad on it. He never said that we're going to electrify. He said, well, maybe, possibly, never said what kind of railroad is going to run between Madera and Bakersfield. Slow speed, high speed, Amtrak. What? They
Madera.
are. Yeah, just outside Madera to just outside Bakersfield. That's the first operating segment that is supposed to demonstrate the high value to private donors of high-speed rail.
Yeah, right, for big investments. Yeah.
This. The more we know,
the worse it is.
The more this is a real mess. And look, I think there's only one real answer. You either shut the thing down, and if there's not a political will to shut it down, then I think we've got to go to the ballot box again. And look, if Governor Brown really would be honest with us about it, and the legislature would do their duty, at the very least, they would say, this is a mess. We're not building what the voters decided. It started with a vote of the people. It's got to go back to the vote of the people. This is how many billions of dollars it's going to cost. This is how long it's going to take. We're going to raise your taxes here, here, and here. We're going to borrow billions. And will you give us permission to do it again? But I'll bet you they won't do it because they know what the voters would do. So they're going to do all of this smoke and mirrors until somebody legally stops them. And if they continue down this path of recklessness, sooner or later, a court somewhere is going to say stop.
All right, Jim. We got to go, but thank you for that update.
Man.
All right, something with Jim Patterson on the high-speed rail, and now there's going to be a federal audit. We were just talking to Assemblyman Jim Patterson from Fresno. The news today on the Brown Doggo, California's high-speed rail, is now the feds want to audit. And I'm looking at their letter, and they're doing it this month. They're starting this month with their audit. Here's one thing you should know that they wrote in this letter. This actually comes from the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Office of the Inspector General. He actually has like a little eyeglass thing. He looks very carefully at.
He's the inspector.
I am the inspector. As of December 2017, the Federal Railroad Administration has dispersed over $10 million for high-speed rail programs. Actually, $8.6 billion of the $10 billion that they were appropriated. 39% went to California's high-speed rail corridor between San Francisco and Los Angeles. Tell me a chunk of that money to the state, and that's that $3-4 billion we've been talking about.
Yeah,
that the state got thanks to the Obama era. Further, and this part, Dan Walters wrote about this. Not always writes good stuff, but Sacramento Bee Cal Matters. He wrote that the latest business plan, boy, this has really gotten cockamamie. The plan suggests that the northward extension, which is the first priority, and we know that, Central Valley up to like San Jose, right? We've talked about that enough, might be built with a bond issue backed by the project's dedicated share of that money from the cap and trade auctions. But here comes the second sentence. And then there would be an operable segment. It's going to generate revenues, and we'll use that to finance the southward extension. Are you kidding me? Why isn't this laughed out of the room?
Revenues?
How many rail lines operate with excess revenues, first of all? Very few.
None.
Not in
America.
This one, which is going to take people, and not on high-speed rail, from the Central Valley to San Jose, it's a commuter rail line. That's not going to generate a hell of a lot of money.
Well, and outside,
why are they believed? I know they're not believed, but somehow everyone's taking this seriously enough to let them keep going? That's what's driving me nuts.
Because
they've got to be stopped.
Because the money is there for them to take.
This is laughable, this idea.
This is how they earn a living. All these people earn a living taking the money that has been thrown in the pot.
But where's the adult to say you're not taking any more of the money? Oh, because Jerry Brown,
that would be the governor, and he's an idiot.
He still believes in this fairy tale, and he likes trains. Yeah, that would be the idiot governor.
No, they've had a couple of outside agents look at their business plan. I saw a story today, and both of them said this is preposterous.
It is preposterous.
None of this is going to work. It's impossible for any of this to work. No, it is dead. I mean, if it was a body, the coroner would be here, and they'd be zipping up the body bag and putting it in the freezer.
And you notice
it's dead.
That little business plan section that I wrote, they're no longer counting on investors. They just think they're going to have operating revenues from the northern segment of the high-speed rail, which the excess can be used to fund building this. Right through the Tehachapi's. Oh, there's going to be plenty of money coming into that little ride from the Central Valley to San Jose.
Yeah.
And we can build this whole rail line all the way down to L.A. and beyond. What are they? I don't know why I've even...
Yeah.
Expending
but you know what? They don't believe it. There's no point arguing how absurd it is. But they don't believe it. They just know right now they've got money in the pot, and they can keep taking money and pay themselves salaries. That's what they're doing.
Ride this train until it completely derails.
They're parasites feeding off the dead carcass.
All right, we're going to the Eric